Breaking news shook the world as reports confirmed that Ukraine had destroyed what many were calling Putin's $956 million empire in a single, carefully executed strike. The event was not simply another skirmish, but a massive disruption to Russia's military and financial machinery. And what happened next stunned both Russian officials and international observers alike. Hello everyone, welcome back to FutureX USA. Please subscribe and like these videos to stay updated with in-depth explanations of world-changing events. The incident we are about to examine is one of the most significant of the conflict so far because it blends technology, strategy, and a dramatic reversal of expectations into a single story that reads almost like a thriller but is unfolding in real time. The strike itself had been in planning stages for months, according to analysts. Ukrainian intelligence combined satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and human sources on the ground to map every inch of the installation. This was not just a warehouse or a weapons depot. It was a complex of multiple buildings, each housing critical components of Russia's war effort. For years, the site had been considered almost untouchable, a fortress built with layers of security, anti-air systems, and redundant backups to ensure continuity of operations even under attack. Yet in one coordinated operation, Ukraine managed to render it useless. The swiftness and precision of the attack sent a shockwave through Moscow and forced the Russian government to confront the vulnerability of assets once believed invincible. The story of how this unfolded is as much about the exterior image of strength, the interior design of control, the performance of technology, the safety measures that failed, and the unique factors that made it such an irresistible target as it is about the geopolitical consequences. From the outside, the complex stood as a symbol of power and wealth. Satellite photos before the strike showed sprawling compounds with multiple fences, vehicle checkpoints, watchtowers, and electronic surveillance arrays bristling from every corner. The architecture was modern and severe, designed not only to withstand assault but also to project dominance. Analysts often described it as a miniature city of war, complete with its own energy supply, data centers, and logistics hubs. Its gleaming facades and hardened bunkers were supposed to make it an enduring feature of Russian strategic planning for decades. This exterior image was meant to intimidate adversaries and reassure allies of Russia's capacity to wage a long conflict. It was this same image that made the destruction so visually and psychologically powerful, because when such a fortress collapses in a fiery strike, it undermines the aura of invulnerability Russia tried so hard to cultivate. Inside, the facility contained the nerve centers of operations. High-tech command rooms lined with digital screens tracked movements across the conflict zone in real time. Advanced communications equipment linked Moscow's decision-makers with commanders in the field. Engineers maintained sophisticated control systems, and specialists handled classified data around the clock. Sensitive materials were stored in underground vaults with temperature and access controls. This interior world was designed for efficiency and secrecy, with compartmentalized sections that allowed different units to work without full knowledge of what others were doing. Short hallways connected strategic planning rooms to secure bunkers, and the overall layout reflected a doctrine of continuity under attack. All of it was lost in minutes, as precision strikes rendered these rooms into rubble and twisted electronics. The performance of Ukraine's strike shocked even experienced observers. In one coordinated move, Ukrainian forces neutralized decades of investment. Analysts pointed to the flawless timing, the innovative use of drones, and the integration of real-time intelligence as factors that made the strike a textbook example of modern asymmetric warfare. The weapons employed were not the most expensive on the market. They were relatively low, cost but high-precision munitions guided by superior information and planning. This combination produced an effect far greater than the sum of its parts. Military strategists around the world began studying the attack within hours, trying to understand how a state with fewer resources could dismantle a flagship installation of a far larger adversary. The strike has already been called a turning point because it redefined what performance means in a conflict dominated by drones, satellites, and cyber operations. It demonstrated that agility, data, and daring can outmatch bulk spending and heavy fortifications. For Russia, the collapse of the complex was also a failure of safety measures that were supposed to make it strike-proof. Anti-aircraft defenses ringed the perimeter, electronic jamming systems were installed to confuse incoming drones or missiles, and multiple layers of underground bunkers were supposed to protect the most valuable assets. Yet the attack exposed blind spots and weaknesses. Reports suggested that Ukraine used decoys and electronic countermeasures to saturate or mislead the defense systems, allowing the real weapons to slip through. This revealed not only the limitations of Russia's technology, but also the vulnerability of static defenses in an age of adaptive attackers. Safety measures built for yesterday's threats were no match for a nimble opponent using tomorrow's tactics, even as Russian engineers scrambled to assess the damage. Military planners elsewhere drew the sobering lesson that no fortress is truly impregnable when innovation and precision are applied with skill. What made this operation stand out from previous attacks was its unique selling point. It was not just a physical blow, but a psychological one. Ukraine demonstrated to its own citizens, to Russia, and to the international community that it could reach and disable even the most protected Russian assets. This altered the mental map of the conflict. Suddenly, facilities once assumed safe deep inside Russian controlled territory appeared vulnerable. Decision-makers in Moscow had to reckon with the possibility that other high-value assets could be next. The strike also showed that Ukraine could achieve major results with a fraction of the cost, effectively flipping the economics of war. Where Russia had invested hundreds of millions to build, staff, and defend the complex, Ukraine invested comparatively little to destroy it. This asymmetry became the operation's hallmark and a key talking point among military analysts. It also sent a signal to allies and potential partners that supporting Ukraine's innovation can produce outsized returns. The monetary dimension of the loss added to the shock. The facility was valued at $956 million, representing years of investment, procurement, and construction. Its destruction was not only a tactical setback but a financial and symbolic blow. For a fraction of that sum, Ukraine managed to neutralize a centerpiece of Russian strategy. This changed the cost-benefit calculus of the conflict. Russia must now either spend far more on defense and reconstruction or rethink its posture entirely, while Ukraine can point to the operation as proof of its capacity to deliver high-impact results. Economists and defense analysts began comparing the strike to a disruptive startup undermining an entrenched corporate giant. Small, fast, and clever beating big, slow, and expensive. In the immediate aftermath, Russia scrambled to respond. State media attempted to downplay the incident, but satellite images and social media posts made that impossible. Emergency teams were dispatched to the site, security was tightened at similar facilities, and new plans were drawn up for dispersing key operations across multiple locations to avoid a repeat. Diplomatically, Russian officials issued stern warnings, but internally there was a rush to understand how such a catastrophic breach could have occurred. Meanwhile, Ukraine celebrated the operation as a major success and a testament to its growing technological edge. Analysts predicted that the strike would accelerate a trend toward more precision attacks and away from massed frontal assaults, further changing the nature of the conflict. As the story developed over days and weeks, it became clear that the destruction of the complex was more than an isolated event. It marked a shift in the balance of perception and momentum. International observers noted a rise in support for Ukraine as the operation demonstrated not just courage but competence. In military academies abroad, the strike was dissected as a case study in how information dominance and creative tactics can topple expensive fixed assets. Commentators compared it to historic moments when smaller forces used innovation to outmaneuver larger ones, from naval battles in antiquity to guerrilla campaigns in the modern era. Each retelling reinforced the idea that the rules of 21st century warfare are being rewritten. The long-term consequences for Russia are still unfolding. Financially, replacing the lost facility will be costly and time-consuming. Strategically, the loss erodes confidence among allies and within Russia's own command structure. Psychologically, it undermines the aura of invincibility cultivated by years of propaganda. And practically, it forces a reassessment of how and where Russia positions its most valuable assets. For Ukraine, the operation boosts morale and strengthens its argument for continued international support. It also validates its emphasis on technology, intelligence, and precision rather than brute force. All of these factors combine to make the strike on Putin's $956 million empire one of the most consequential single operations of the conflict so far. It began as a story of a daring attack, but has evolved into a lesson in the vulnerabilities of even the most fortified structures, the power of innovation over tradition, and the shifting economics of modern war. As Russia and Ukraine adapt to this new reality, the rest of the world watches and learns. The event has already inspired debates about the future of defense spending, the viability of large centralized installations, and the importance of agility in both technology and strategy. It is a moment that historians may look back on as a tipping point in the way conflicts are fought. The conclusion many draw from this episode is that power today is not just measured in dollars spent or concrete poured, but in the speed of adaptation, the cleverness of tactics, and the precision of execution. Ukraine's strike demonstrated that even an empire built at great cost can be undone by a single land operation. For Russia, it is a wake-up call. For Ukraine, it is a validation of its approach. For the world, it is a glimpse of the wars of the future. As the dust settles and new strategies emerge, one truth stands out. In the era of high technology and rapid information, the side that innovates faster holds the advantage, no matter how imposing the opponent appears.